Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Cedh, a podcast about Cedh. I guess that's not the name of the podcast. It's called Cedh the Lost. Sorry, my brain's a little scattered all of a sudden. Anyway, normally I'm here with Dylan and Nicholas, but today we have someone else that's very near and dear to our hearts. We have Parker Seagar. Clearly he did pretty well, who got third at the most recent tournament. Say
Hello.
hi, Parker.
Hello. Yeah, I did pretty well at the tournament. It was an amazing tournament hosted by Laughing Dragon. It was a very fun time. Very amazing people played the game, and yeah, very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a great time. We're going to be talking about our experience there, um, and what decks we brought, what important deck decisions we made, and how our rounds went to end up where we were. Clearly Parker got third, but then I got 10th, which is pretty good because you guys know from the last few tournaments, I haven't been winning a lot. So that was sick. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. It was a 52 player tournament. It was pretty gas. We have 5 rounds, and then top 16, and then top 4. As you see, this is the top 16. How much points they had. There was a lot of draws this time around. Like a lot of draws. About half of them were IDs, which of course is a growing problem in CEDH, which is not a super solid way to stop it, but it's something we just have to live with. You'll see that I have 9 points, which means that I had 4 draws and a win. I never ID'd any of my games. I played them all out until they ended up a draw. That's something I really want to strive for, is to always play your games, even if it's statistically better for you to lock yourself into top. Um, and then Parker, it looks like 11 points. I assume it's 2 wins and a draw.
hmm
Um,
yeah. Only had one draw that day. Um, it was game 4, I believe. Um, and or game 5. I think it might have been game 5. It got to a point where we had just it was more half time limit plus getting the other people into standings.
yeah. Um, yeah, so that's our overall records, but then we're going to do a pretty deep dive into the rounds themselves, going back and forth discussing, but we want to give a huge shout out to Nick Hammond, aka Joking 101, who obviously won the event as you see here. He was on a blue farm list, but he called it Anti-Atlas was the name of the deck, and it was like a normal blue farm with like 5 to 6 very specific stacks pieces aimed at stopping Atlas, who is a very good pilot who plays Kenrith the Return King, uh, which uses his graveyard and takes advantage of all the broken things you can do with Kenrith's abilities. So Nick wanted to target those, knowing that there's going to be a lot of Kenriths, a lot of other blue farms, a lot of Seaedhs. So we put in cards to counteract those, and clearly it worked to some degree. And then we have Atlas, of course. We all know him. We talk about him a lot because he is like one of the people to look up to if you're trying to become better in CDH. He can be someone you look towards as like a guidance, at least in the Pacific Northwest. And then of course Parker, who was on, I'm gonna spoil it, Seaedh, Weatherlight Captain. That's kind of like his peanut butter and jelly.
True.
Um,
The
he's a really
deck's
good pilot with it. Good deck, really good pilot.
got some new tech coming out. It's,
Yeah.
it's
And
gonna
then
be interesting.
yeah, we were in the kitchen earlier this morning and we cooked.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Jack, we have to give a huge shout out to Jack.
True.
He just very recently started going to CDH tournaments, and he's been killing it. He brought Blue Farm to the Cascade Clash held by Aegis Games, top 4. Very next tournament, he was like, "Watch this! I put my slong on the table, top 4 again with Blue Farm. Like it takes skill to top 4 2 events in a row, even though we see people like Atlas do it all the time. It still does take skill. And it's a huge, huge nod towards Jack.
Yeah, Jack's an amazing player.
Yeah.
Really fun to fight in finals. Um, I was scared of anything he was gonna do because he had a Tymna on the board. He was just able to draw a bunch of cards and held everything, and he knew when to interact. So
Yep. And then of course shout out to everyone else that's on the list. We all fought our way through an entire day. And then in the semifinals, there was a pod that intentionally drew to start another game. And then there was another semifinals game that I was in with Atlas that took like 3 hours and 40 minutes or something like that.
yeah, almost 4 hours
It
completely.
was it was a great tournament.
Yeah,
I wouldn't change a thing that I did. Okay, let's get into round ones.
yeah.
Um,
How was your round one?
Fantastic. I got put going first because our seed order is always chosen for you at random. So I was going first. It was me, and there was 2 other blue decks, and then a deck that wasn't on blue. I forgot what it was. I forgot all of the 3 decks if I'm being real. Um, but there was 2 other blue decks, and then a non-blue deck. I went first. My hand was a very respectable, like turn 1 Soul Ring, and then a turn 2 Fibblefit pass into a turn 3 Rhystic Study, and then there was a Kinnan player who played a 1 ring. It was Kinnan, Urza, and can't remember the non-blue deck. No, it was a blue deck. It was a Kenrith. So Kinnan, Kenrith, and then Urza. The Kinnan player played a 1 ring that got up to drawing six cards every time it tapped. The Urza player went out swinging for the fences. They had a massive board state very early on. The Kenrith player and me were both on like the control game plan. My Rhystic Study resolved. The Urza's player Rhystic Study resolved. So we're in this back and forth. I get a fish, which is really sick. I guess my Rhystic Study was a copy enchantment. I copied the Urza's player's Rhystic Study, and then I got a fish. So I had a Rhystic Study and a fish. The Kinnan player cast some spells to draw me cards to potentially answer the Urza. Like 2 cards maybe is what I drew off of them. And then they were like, okay, let's see if anyone has anything. They slam a Seedborn Muse. This is a Kinnan deck that had 2 Kinnan activations on the battlefield plus a 1 ring that was at 6 cards. And then they're like, I think you're supposed to pass to the Fibblefit player for interaction. And I looked at the Urza player and I was like, I promise you, I don't have interaction for this. So they interacted, which I appreciate because we would have lost that game. And then the Kenrith player, he goes to his turn. He has like 19 cards in hand from our fights that we had on the previous turn. And he doesn't do a whole lot, if I'm being honest. He develops his board a little bit, draws us some cards, and then discards like 6 cards. Which is okay. We're okay with someone developing their board, but he passes to the Urza player. The Urza player resolves a Time Twister, which is okay because everyone needed fresh grip. And then he tries going for it. He tries storming off. So I draw a bunch of cards off of my wrist stick because the fish is now long gone. And then the Kenrith player used up all of his interaction, so I started using mine that I got. We end up stopping the Ursa player. They pass to me. One of the cards I drew during the fight was a defense grid. And I was like, I'm not even going to try attempt to win here because I used my muddle to mixture to stop the Urza's win attempt. So my line's going to be a lot more convoluted and probably not as well protected. So I was like, let me cast the defense grid to get out counter spells so the Kinnan player has less protection for their turn. Was my thought process because they're going to be drawing 7 cards, additional cards because of the 1 ring.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do. I play the defense grid. Kennen player's like, I'll pass. Kenris player's like, tapped out of mana, he's like, I'll pass. The Urza player who has Urza out and then like 8 clues because he was playing the Forensic Gadgeteer, starts to crack the clues to try finding an answer to this defense grid because they don't have anything. And I'm like, wait, if this resolves, I have to try finding a win, or the Kinnan player just wins the game. And I'm looking at my hand, and I'm like, this wasn't supposed to happen. Anyway, the defense grid resolves. No one has enough mana to cast a spell. There's no mana for Aurora. I'm like, okay, I'm in the clear. Let me figure this out. And I find a line where I get just enough mana from my Mox Amber, and the rest of the mana I had to cast my Tezzeret the Seeker to find Isochron Scepter, to put Dramatic Reversal under it and activate it to get infinite blue and just blue mana. And you'd be like, oh, so you won. There was a Narset Parter Veils out, so I had to juggle around a little. I ended up tutoring, and I forgot what I got. I got something. Oh, I got Codex Shredder, the way I win with Isochron Scepter. And I milled my opponents out, and then they conceded from there. So that was a very clean and concise, like, turn 5, 6 protected win. And it felt good. How did your game 1 go?
Game 1 went fine. Sat down in second position. First position was Malcolm Bruce, me on Seaedh, Ben, who was on also part of Team Seaedh, and he was on Kenrith, and then I think his name was like Alexander, I think, and he was on Derevi.
Yeah, Alexander.
I don't remember exactly how the game went. Board states, I think it was a slow game for me. I think I tried to go the more like passive route because I knew Ben knew my deck pretty well. Probably was holding open interaction for me. I was gonna just wait for it. The Derevi player came out swinging really hard. I remember parts of it. It was like turn 1. My hand was possible turn 1 Draenith. Turn 2 Plume Tender. But the it's like all coming back to me as I'm talking about this. The Malcolm Bruce player was like land fish, and I was like, okay, this makes it a lot harder. I don't want to feed this fish, but I think I have to give it 1 card to be able to play this Draenith Magistrate down, because it stops Kenrith from doing Kenrith things, and it stops Malcolm from getting a bunch of mana and doing really well. Derevi can slide through underneath it, but hopefully I can assemble before the Derevi. So I go land Soul Ring, and then it goes around Derevi player. I think he goes land Petal Bloom Tender. I go turn 2 Cradle Draenith resolved, played my own Bloom Tender, and it was a really slow game after that. I was able to play Seaedh, turn 3, have interaction, but I didn't have a legendary creature to be able to boost with Seaedh, and I think I had enough to activate it, but I was really slow that game. Probably wasn't the optimal hand to keep round 1. But it was able to slow down the game enough to where I thought that maybe I can sneak through. I think it would have been a really good hand if there wasn't a Derevi. And so the game just like flew by. We got to a point where the Derevi player assembled a huge board. with like Kinnan, Bloomtender, a Metamorph on his Derevi, and then he played Preston. And I'm like, okay, we lose here if he recasts Derevi. He said he wasn't gonna win the game this turn, and I was like, okay. He attempted to move phases, and I said, before you move phases, I had a floating colorless from something. I went Overload Cyclonic Rift. He tries to fight it because I mean an overloaded Cyclonic Rift sets everyone back.
Yeah.
Um, the we all thought it. We had a stack, and then the Derevi player goes tap Blintender, put Derevi into play, and then as soon as that happened, he won the game on the spot.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments where um, it sucked. Lost round one, but it was still a good game.
Yeah.
Um, round two was a lot better, and so that's all that mattered. So
Yeah. My round two, it was me, Josh, or Joshua. Um, Super great player. I love playing against Josh. He got 13th. He was also on Seaedh. And then there was Alexander, the Derevi player that you played in round one. And then I always forget his name. He made top 16 as well. But he was on Captain Seaedh.
oh
I forgot his name.
um
Jonas maybe.
you ended up drawing that game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we can actually just look because it's round two.
Yes, yeah, his name is Jonas. Yeah, you're pod two.
Yeah, Jonas Williams. Um, yeah, so we did that. And as soon as Alexander and Jonas sits down at the table, they're talking to me about intentional drawing on round two of a tournament. Because we had wins. And I was like, I'd rather we wait for Josh to get here at the table before we talk about this, because I don't like it to be a 3v1. They're like, okay, we can wait for Josh. And then Josh was like, what's up, guys? How are you all? And they were both like, we were just talking about an intentional draw. How do you feel about that? And he was like, it's round two. And I was like, I agree, it's round two. And so they were like, yeah, but it's going into lunch. We just want a long lunch so we can get prepared for the rest of the tournament. And he was like, I understand that, but I also want to play Magic. And I was like, I agree. I told them later in the game, I am most likely still down to talk about a draw, depending on how the game goes. Because I was in fourth seat, and Josh was like, I also like that. Let's just see how the game goes. We'll talk about it. Let's just play Magic. So I'm going fourth. Josh is going first. Alexander's second. Jonas is third. It's a pretty slow, easy game. There's a early Dranith after I get my Fibblefip down. It's a turn 2 Dranith, I believe. So Sisei's locked out from playing Seaedh. Derevi doesn't care about the Dranith. And then the Derevi player's in a commanding position because they land a Delny with Derevi out, so they can keep on untapping and progressing their game plan. Josh plays a Orcish Bowmaster, and he's doesn't want to shoot the Thalia that was played by the Captain Seaedh player because they think it's hurting me from winning. I communicated, hey, I'm not close to a win here, but they still didn't hit it, so it locked out some of my interaction. And that's okay. It happens sometimes. I was pretty smart. They were all tapped out, and on the end of Jonas's end step, I searched my deck for Machine God Effigy, Imposter Mech, and Back to Basics, with all of them only having non-basic lands. And I chose Josh because I was like, Josh has a pretty good shoulder on his head. The Derevi player is going to give me the Back to Basics, but I didn't want the Back to Basics to be given to me anyway, because the Derevi player wins the game then. So I chose Josh, and he gave me the Machine God's Effigy because it would cost me the most mana. And I was like, okay, so I play a Machine God's Effigy, and I copy the Bowmasters, but instead of hitting the Bowmasters, I hit the Thalia so I can cast my spells. And I'm like, hey, Josh, let's work together with our bowmasters and start pinging down the problematic boards. And he agrees because he wasn't allowed to have Seaedh and all these other problems. Eventually, we worked together. We removed the Dranith. He casts his Seaedh. The Delny and Derevi plane is still going at large. I draw a Tabernacle, play Tabernacle for turn, and then
Yeah.
we call over the judge to make sure we knew all the rulings. And the Delny on the board gives your creatures with triggered abilities, they triggered an additional time. Tabernacle gives creatures a triggered ability at the upkeep to pay one or destroy that creature. So he had to pay 2 for his creatures with Delny out. So that kind of hosed his board.
I remember that judge call. It was so funny.
Yeah. And then so we play some more turns. They all get Gaia's Cradles, so my Tabernacle literally does nothing but hurt me now. And Josh plays Italian. I copy his Italian with a C double. And then at this point, there's 20 minutes left on the clock. They're like, so what about a draw? And I was like, Josh, I'm okay to keep playing if you are, but if you want to draw, I'm okay with a draw. I want you to feel comfortable whichever game plan you want to do. And he was like, I mean, I probably am not winning in 20 minutes. You guys probably aren't winning in 20 minutes because of how the board state is. And we just decided to take a draw. But it was a little frustrating that 2 of them on round 2 were like, ID, ID.
Yeah.
Because, yes, technically, if you win your first round and draw the next 4, you'll be in 10th, 11th, or 12th, as you clearly see from this standing. But it's like,
True.
play your goddamn games.
Yeah.
Please. How did your round 2 go?
Round 2 went amazing for me. Opened the gate. Well, first I sat down at the table going first, luckily, against Atali Garuda.
Yes,
And I
I
was
love this.
like, I'm hosed if I don't go fast enough. I go, and I'm like, okay, I have a good amount of mana in my hand, a good amount of just like being able to ramp. I just gotta hope that Atali doesn't hit something important, and I just gotta like just hope and pray at this point.
Yeah.
I go, okay, good hand. I think it was like 3 lands, Birds of Paradise, Flusterstorm, and Force Negation. Because things are going to start getting cast for free. Like, I need to like have some piece of interaction. Hoping also the Garuda had a piece of interaction. Draw my card for turn, and it's a Boromir. And I'm like, okay, this just made this hand 10 times better.
Yeah.
I go Landbirds, pass. The Atali player goes land, rock, Sticker Goblin, or not Sticker Goblin. Sticker Goblin was next turn. Just land, rock. I think it was like land, Soul Ring, Vault, like close to a turn 1 Atali. But Atali next turn. The player Atali number 2 goes land, dork, rock. I was like, okay, he's ramping. Garuda goes land pass. He played a exotic orchard with only blue on board.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I had the ability. I even talked to him. I was like, I have the ability to get you black mana. What exactly would you be accomplishing if I get you that black mana? And he was like, I probably will be tutoring for something. And without knowing his hand, I didn't really want to just open him up to a tutor. So I went, I just told him I can't do that. Like, sorry, it won't work.
Yeah.
And so I draw a card, and it's an Eldamri's Call, and I'm like, oh, sick, this is just getting better. I go land Boromir. They have no responses. It passes. I pass the turn, still having 2 pieces of interaction, but I'm completely tapped out at this point. The Atali player goes, or the first Atali player goes, Atali. Exiled a abrupt decay from the top of my library. Exiled, um, and the Archdruid's charms from there is like they cast theirs to fill their graveyard, but then it gets countered via Boromir, and
Yep.
then everything else is just like uh, they they just didn't have a way to progress their game plan after just Atali.
Yeah.
Um, the other player goes Sticker Goblin, create a bunch of mana, um, uh, create a bunch of mana, play um, play Atali. They hit nothing important. I think they hit nothing off the Garuda. I think they hit 2 lands off the Garuda player, which sucked for them because I think they kept a 1-lander. It was a exotic orchard. Hit a land, something else off of the Italia. I don't remember exactly what. They hit nothing important off of mine, so I was like, okay, we're good. Drew a card for turn, or Garuda goes past the turn. Draw a card. Oh wait, no. Garuda goes, grabs a land, plays land, Demonic Tutor, and I'm like, okay, no effects.
Yeah.
Passes around, Demonic Tutor resolves. He's like, we were asking like, what are you gonna grab? He was like, oh, I'm thinking about grabbing a Mana Crypt. I was like, be careful. There's a Boromir in play. It'll just counter it. He's like, true. I think I'm gonna grab a Soul Ring. I'm like, okay. I draw a card, play a land, place to say, pass the turn, have Fierce Guardianship and Flusterstorm up. Atali goes swing, and I'm like, okay, I'll take the damage.
Yep.
The other Atali player goes Jessica's Will, and I was like, I'm gonna Fierce Guardianship this because I think card count was like it was 7 because
Yeah.
the Garuda player wasn't able to play any spells or do anything really, so they had 7 cards in hand. I didn't want them to have 7 red, and just hope to hit into something that kills Boromir. They told me later that their game plan was to flip Atali into the infect side,
Yeah.
which would have killed me.
Yeah.
I then Garuda goes land, or no, he didn't get a land. He drew something. He goes tap 2 Falwar Stone or Arcane Signet pass. I was like, okay, I have a clear line. Another artifact hit the board. Like I just have to top deck a land. I top decked a land. I was like, okay, I think I get here. I play land. Eladorm called Dockside. Play Dockside. I think counts 6 or 7. Activate Sisay and just chain tutor from there.
Yeah.
And I killed the table. And so it was a really fun game, really close game. I was on 14 life, I think, by the end of it.
Yeah. On turn 4.
Yeah, because 2 Atalis
Yeah.
that both played Sticker Goblins, and it just was like they ramped fast, and
Yep.
our game was done in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was just like we were making fast game actions and also just playing really well.
Yeah.
It was a really fun pod. We had really fun interactions with everyone, and playing against 2 Atali is really scary.
Yeah.
How did your run 3 go?
Yeah. So this one I went first again, which is usually pretty great for me. I was in a pod with Atlas, Guy, and Jarrett. So 3 people I have great rapport with. So we were throwing shots at each other the entire game. It was a great time. Me, Atlas, and Jarrett have history. We were in a finals pod at Gabby's at one of their tournaments, and it was a blast. So every time us 3 play in a pod, we always have loaded guns out for each other. This game was a Atlas special. He was yapping. Um, Me and Jarrett got off to really fast starts. Jarrett played a turn 1 Ristic. I played a turn 2 Copy Enchantment into a turn 3 Ristic Study.
Damn,
So I
double
had 2
Ristic
Ristic
study.
Studies. Atlas unfortunately had a Bowmaster, and he's like, Bailey, you're the threat. You have Ristic Studies, 2 of them. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a mono blue control deck. So he was keep on hitting me, and I'm like, okay, guys, what do I need to do to become less scary? And they were like, remove the Ristic Study. And so I talked to Jarrett, and I'm like, hey, Jarrett, if you Chain of Vapor my Copy Enchantment or my original Ristic Study, I won't counter it. I won't fight over it. It'll just resolve. And so that's what they did. They bounced my Ristic Study, so I became less of a threat because I told them, hey, I'm not attempting to win anytime soon. My life doesn't need to be threatened. So I communicated effectively with the table. And then it's like turn 6 or 7. Alice is a little short on mana, which I think he is okay with being a little short on mana and pods with me and Jarrett because we're both very, very good control players as well as Atlas, so he can kind of stumble around a little bit. But with the Jarrett uses the restroom, and while Jarrett's gone, Atlas communicates with Guy, hey, do you have any tutors or anything like that? And Guy reveals to us that he has a diabolic intent because there's a Tevesh that's about to ult, and Guy's like, yeah, I have a diabolic intent. I can go get a Wheel of Fortune, with the Bowmaster still in play. And I was like, I don't think I can let a Wheel of Fortune resolve. And then Atlas was like, well, it's gonna resolve. I have enough interaction to make it resolve. And I was like, no, like, I don't care if I get wheeled. I care about the Bowmasters. If the Bowmasters is gone, I don't really care. And Alice is like, well, I need the Bowmasters here because that's my entire game plan. And I'm like, but if it resolves, you have a 33 Orcish army that's going to one-shot anyone. And Alice was like, well, I promised Guy that it wasn't going to hit him until the other 2 players were dead. So that's your guys' problem. And I was like, you're right. So Jarrett came back and sat down, and I told them their plan. I was like, hey, there's a diabolic intent. They want to go get a Wheel of Fortune. We can't let this resolve. And then Jarrett was like, I agree. So they do that. There's a Wheel of Fortune on the stack. We fight over it. I think there's 3 counter spells used. I did the first one. Alice put in the second one to protect it, and Jarrett also put it in. And then Alice, I think, realized that, hey, Jarrett and Bailey aren't letting this resolve. Let's just let it get countered, and let's pray that Bailey has enough interaction to stop Jarrett. Jarrett goes to his turn. The first thing he does is ult Tevesh. And then I'm like, in response, I tap 2 mana and cast Trick Bind that I bought the day before. And the table freaks out. They're like, oh my gosh, Bailey had it. Thank goodness he had it. We did not want to play against all of our commanders. Because it was Dargo Timna, Kenrith, and then Fibblefip against Malcolm Tevesh. So we murked the Tevesh. And that's like the last turn of the game just about. He tries tutoring, does some stuff, tries winning. Me and Atlas have enough interaction to stop him. And then they're like, draw? And I look at the clock, there's 2 minutes left. I'm like, I would like to go to my turn. I'm probably not gonna win, but let me at least attempt. And they're like, oh, okay. I go to my turn. There's an upkeep trigger. Well, someone casts a silence in my upkeep. I cast Born Upon the Wind, and then there's a counter spell for that, so I cast a counter spell. And then Jarrett was like, I have 4 more counter spells. Draw? And I was like, draw. So we get a draw there, which I'm okay with there because we had a really tight game. No one really made mistakes. It was a wild game. I love throwing punches with those guys every chance I get. How did your round 3 go?
Round 3 was interesting. It was a fun pod. Me and Jack sat next to each other. Also a game that I really don't remember how it went. I know, like, and I know I had a good hand, um, but the Jonas on Captain Sisse mainly ran away with that game. It was one of those games where it was uh, right after lunch, and I had recouped, but it was like I don't remember anything really memorable happening during the game,
Yeah.
so it was hard to remember it. Um, I know. I had a two pieces of interaction, but it's nothing to deal with Captain Sisse.
Yeah.
Um, Zach, I don't remember what deck Zach was on. Um, he didn't
Yeah.
do
I don't
much
know
during that
either.
game.
It doesn't look
Uh,
like Zach submitted a deck list either.
oh.
Yeah.
Um, Jack was able to present a good board, but what happened was it eventually got to the point where Captain Sisse had said, uh, "I'm not trying to win," and
Oh,
it's just
Zach was on
no, a different Zach.
Is different Zach?
There's
Okay.
two Zachs.
Okay.
Um, uh, he was like, "I'm not gonna try to win here," and then he was like, uh, "Activate Captain Sisse, grab Ashaya, play Ashaya." Um, uh, oh, sorry, the game's coming back to me. uh, got to a point, I think it was like built up a good board state. Thought about attempting a win, but I went against it. Because no known interaction, but it was Blue Farm, Captain Sisse, Blue Farm. That's what it was. Um, we go slow pace game. I think there's a Draenith that comes down, so I don't get Sisse till later because it gets removed so that the other Timna player can play Timna, which probably was the misplay. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a turn 2 Captain Sisse. My turn 2 was like, uh, I think it was like land, uh, land. I think my turn 2 was land Ragavan, Birds of Paradise.
Yeah.
Um, Turn 3 could have presented a win. It was very interesting. I don't know if they were sandbagging interaction. I know after the game that there was a bounce spell, but I was able to go um, play. I think I turn 1 vamp tutored for Dockside, if I remember correctly. So I went to turn 3, played Dockside. Count was 5 or 6. Um, Dockside let me go. I swung with Ragavan also, got another treasure, which let me go into. I hit a Cabal ritual, and I was like, oh, okay, so more mana. Not the greatest right now. I played a Jahada, and I milled forward to get 4 more treasures, and I hit Dahir, and I had a Jiggy in hand, and I was 1 card short from going in my graveyard for going. Um, Grab Dahir, cast Dahir, uh, to play Gigantha, play Sisse, activate Gigantha, and go.
Yeah.
Um, there was possibly another line that I could have performed and won that game on that turn,
Yeah.
where um, I go leave the here in the bin, get 4 treasures, cast Cabal Ritual, get 5 black, uh, cast Sisse for 3 using 1 of the black, or 2 of the black and 1 treasure, be able to activate Sisse, tutor 3 fairy, and once 3 fairy lands, I win the game.
Yeah.
But I was so focused on my hand that I didn't think about it. And so it ended up losing me the game to Jonas, who was just like, I'm not trying to win the game this turn. Went Shia infinite untaps of Captains to Say with Candelabra, not Candelabra, the Candelabra creature basically.
Yeah, the Magus of Candelabra.
Yeah, with Cradle, infinite mana, infinite untaps to say,
Yep.
put every single stacks piece in the board, wipe the board, had basically a bulletproof board, and we were just
Yeah.
like, yeah, we can't do anything, so
Yeah, you
we're
got
good.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened, and yeah, it was one of those games where it was like, if I probably didn't tunnel vision as hard, I got there, but I just don't know if uh I just don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I was just flustered in the moment.
Yeah.
So
It happens.
yeah.
All right, round 4. When I click this button, it's gonna be funny.
Yeah. Round 4 was very interesting.
Yeah, the top 6 pods all drew.
Yeah.
The
Which
first 3 intentionally drew. The pod that I was in, pod 4, we played it out same with pod 5 and 6. My game, super cool. Zach S is the one you just played against. He was on Blue Farm. I
yeah.
remember that now. So it was Crick Connor. He's a very good Crick pilot, and he's very scary going first. Thankfully, Zach, very responsible Blue Farm player. I think it's my first time playing against Zach, but he kept a very slow hand, but it had a force of will to interact with the Crick player. Anna, uh, an amazing pilot, normally plays Elish Norn, the 5-drop one that doubles ETBs and turns off ETBs, was on a different list today. I put it up top so I can look at it before the episode ends. It's called Blind Prophets, which is a sick name. It was Timna
Kaida.
Kaidel, which is so cool. They're streamers. I forgot their channel name. Their stream with their partner Priscilla, who's known for like Black Cauldron, got top 4 in a lot of major tournaments. Top 4 the last Seaedh event. Both amazing pilots, and they're gonna go to Punch City with us, just like we are. So I hope that we get to meet up with them and have some good times.
Yeah.
And then I'm going 4th, which is like the worst position for Fibblefit, but that's okay. We're chilling. The Crick player goes Swamp, Imperial Seal, and I make the joke, oh guys, it's Jeweled Lotus, knowing it was a Jeweled Lotus, because that's what the deck does. The Blue Farm player plays a Scrubland and passes. And we're like, oh, okay. Anna plays a land, and I believe just passes as well. Maybe there might have been a mana dork. And then I go, I had a Gemstone Caverns this game, so I play a land and then play Fibblefip. The land I played was an island, and then I had a Daze. So if the Crick player did try going off, I had a way to stop one of the spells. That was my contribution to the Stop Crick plan. So we pass to Crick. Crick plays a land and the Jeweled Lotus, and then take 6, cast Crick, so he has a swamp open, so my days won't work. So I'm like, okay, I promise you I don't have interaction. And then Zach was like, it's okay, I kept a force of will. And I was like, thank goodness. And then the Crick player thinks for like a solid 5 minutes if he wants to leave Crick in the graveyard or put him in the command zone. He decides to leave him in the graveyard, so that tells us that he has a reanimation effect. We pass to Zach. Zach plays a land and passes. So it was a very slow start from Zach, which is okay. Anna plays a land and I believe casts Timna to get some value. Was it Timna? It was either Timna or a 2-drop draw and discard card. Ledger Shredder. It was a Ledger Shredder.
Oh yeah.
And then go to my turn. I play my land and I play some developmental pieces. And then the game goes on for quite a while. The crick player keeps on trying to present wins. Me and Zach always have the interaction. Zach plays Timna to try drawing some cards. Anna is getting a pretty scary board state. They have a Ledger Shredder, Timna, Kaidel, and then a other draw advantage card. I forgot the card. But they had four creatures on board. It was a really nice board state. They pass after they draw some cards with all their cards. Malcolm. The 2-drop Malcolm was the other one that deals damage, draws a card.
Yeah.
I go to my turn. I play a Imposter Mech copying the Kaidel because I have a Rhystic Study on board, so Mystic Remore on board. So I was like, okay, this is cool. I'll be able to have a lot of mana when I need it. I pass, and then Zach end steps an Intuition, targeting the Crick player. The Crick player's at like 7 life, I think. And Zach gets Dockside, Underworld Breach, I think, and Dam.
Damn, nice.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, we give him Dam, right? Because you're about to die. This board's getting a little scary, even for a blue farm to deal with. And then Connor was like, okay, I'll give you Dam. And then Zach on his turn tried to develop board state, and then tried going off. I had something to stop him. And Anna also had something to stop him. So he was like, okay, I'll cast Dam. So all the creatures get wiped. We kind of reset the board state a little bit. He recasts Timna. Pass. Anna, I believe either this turn or the very next turn, slams a Atraxa down.
Damn.
And then my eyes light up, and I looked at Anna, and I was like, I love this deck. Because people know me, I like to play Atraxa in the 99 of decks. And I was like, this is amazing. No one had counterspells. And so there's an Atraxa who starts beating face, brings Crick down super low, starts hitting Blue Farm. Blue Farm tries winning on their next turn, but it's hard because the Crick player on their second to last turn played a Contamination, but makes all the lands tap for black instead of the colors they produce. So I was the only one who had an actual color of my colors. I had a Mox Amber that tapped for blue.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the only one who had actual colors. Blue Farm, I guess, had black. Same with Anna, also just had black, but you need other colors to do things. So Blue Farm can't do anything. Anna can't really do anything. And then Anna has the last turn. Tries to kill. Doesn't want to open up the Blue Farm player by killing the Contamination because he has like 9 mana and lands.
Mm-hmm.
So they cast a Tainted Pact and they dig through their deck to see if they have an answer. They find, I forget what they find, but they find something that might do it for them. A Reanimate targeting Dockside. I counter it. They try countering my thing, and I counter their thing, and there's a fight over it. It doesn't resolve, and then we draw. How did your game 4 go?
Game 4 started out a little rough. We had a player not fully communicate to the TO that they were dropping. So we sat there for a couple minutes being like, we called Judge over and we're like, hey, this person's not here. And then Marcus, the TO, walked over and was like, yeah, it sounds like he dropped. He's not here anymore. He's having health issues. And so it was just one of those scenarios where there was not full communication. And so we were either forced to play it or just draw. And so we talked it out. We're like, a draw gets us to 6 points because we all had a win. Priscilla, I think, had a draw. I had three draws at that point.
Mm.
So it was a game, a 3-pod. We had Zach on Ob and Priscilla on their deck, which was Crom
Rayhan.
Rayhan,
Yeah, the
which is
Black Cauldron.
a sick deck. We get to I think I went land me and Priscilla had around the same start. We go land Deathrite. Um, the Zach went land Soul Ring Grinding Station, threatening a turn 2 Ob, and we're like, okay, that's gonna get out of hand really fast. He goes, and so and then Priscilla goes like land pass, holding up interaction, not being able to do much just with no fetches and bin. They were kind of banking off the fetches and the Deathray Shaman. Ob goes land Prosper, and we're like, oh, this is going to get really out of hand. He has a grinding station, like he's just going to start milling. Like, he had 1 card in hand. I think he went down to 5 that game. So we're like, okay, he has 1 card in hand. We're okay. Then he goes pass, and I was like, okay. Goes to my turn. I don't know if I played anything significant. I think I went Seaedh. Nothing super. I top deck a Mana Crypt, and I was like, okay. So I go land Crypt, Seaedh, have Deathrite activation if I want to. If I want to eat a creature or eat an instant or sorcery. And so then Priscilla's goes to Priscilla. She's still stuck on. She's still short on mana. Deathrite not being unlocked really slowed her game plan down. Got to a point where there was a fetch in bin, and where she was standing at, I ate the fetch in response so that she didn't. Or I on to force out the mana on her side because I needed the Deathrite with the fetch that I had in hand.
Yeah.
I forced her to, in that spur of the moment, use the fetch land on her turn.
Yeah.
She ate the fetch. Played. All right, I think that was later in the game. I think she just passed. Went. Ob went land. Ob gamble, and we're like, okay. 2 cards in hand. Went discarded a land, so we had 2 lands in bin, or 1 land in bin to be able to activate it. I was in a pretty commanding position with 5 mana on my turn. So they were like talking about like we should probably, if he goes to activate the Deathrite, you should probably eat it in response. And so I was like, I'm probably not going to, knowing that I would just lose out on the mana. Like, I'd rather hold it up. And so, I can Prosper, or Ob goes Underworld Breach, and we're like, okay, we lose if we don't counter this. I think I had the piece of interaction. I don't remember exactly what it was. I just had the one thing that stopped him. He passed the turn. He was top decking at this point, exiling things. I had a City of Brass, so that was kind of hurting a little bit more. So we go land, and I just passed. I wasn't gonna do anything. I think I played a Flowering of the White Tree the turn before. Okay. So it was just like, I had flowering, I had Sisay, like I was just having a
Setting up, yeah.
good set board state. Um, uh, Priscilla, still short on mana, plays Survival of the Fittest on their turn.
Okay.
Gets the green mana they need. Plays Survival. Um, is able to like hold open the Survival, hold open the Death Right. I I think at that point in time, I forced their hand with the Death Right Shaman to get their mana for the
Yeah.
Survival of the Fittest. So they uh, went around. Ob plays Mana Barbs, and I was like, okay, this is gonna get way out of hand. We're gonna just start losing the game because we need our mana to be able to interact.
Yeah.
He's been accruing treasures from like I think he had a trigger from um, my City of Brass a turn or something. He just was accruing value really fast. Had a good amount of treasures from Prosper. And so I go to my turn. I'm like, okay, I think I can win. I go. I have mana and dorks that I played eventually. I go play the dorks or tap the dorks, activate Sisay, grab Cauldron, pass the turn.
Yeah.
The On my ETB of Cauldron, um, there was a grinding station trigger. He milled me for 3. The
Okay.
3 cards he milled were more lands and a Dahir. And I was like, oh,
Oh.
I win the game.
Yeah.
Um, so it goes to Priscilla, and then he milled me for 3 again. Just loaded up the bin with fetch lands. I told Priscilla, I was like, hey, I have this Death Right up.
Yeah.
You need the mana to be able to. You need red mana for the dockside in your hand. Uh,
Yeah.
they had showed we had a conversation like, hey, we need to get rid of this ob. They had showed me a Sight Grift to get rid of this ob because they were in a commanding position with mana barbs,
Yeah.
and we didn't want them to hit an opposition agent in response to mana
Yeah.
barbs. So I was like, what you're gonna have to do is timing this right, and you're just gonna have to like tap your lands. I will give you the red mana by not eating it in response.
Yeah.
Um, I will let you have the red mana so you can cast your dockside. But to be able to tutor your dockside, you're gonna have to tap your mana, wait for the mana barbs triggers to go on the stack so he doesn't just hit an opposition agent.
Yeah.
Um, and she agreed with me. So she tapped it, triggers went on the stack. She Sight Grifted the opposition or the Ob Nixilis, and as soon as that happened, she tutored her dockside. And that was on my end step. Tutored her dockside on her main phase, cast her dockside, and I was like, okay, dockside ETB on the stack. I am
Yeah.
gonna eat my Dahir because the only red mana that they had was from the
A death rate.
Death Right. And as soon as it got tapped, I was like, okay, I'm gonna tap my eat my Dahir, put a 1/1 counter on Sisay, tap Sisay to activate it to for Dahir's ability, pay 5 mana, grab Cradle and then Derevi, and
Yeah.
10 mana. I won the game at instant speed. ETB of Derevi, I tapped Cradle, untapped it, 5 creatures on board, was able to grab a meal and present infinite mana even with a mana barbs on the board.
Yeah.
It probably would have gone a totally different way if Danny was actually there.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to squeak out that win.
Yeah.
How was game 5 for you?
It was another draw. Um, Me, Lauren, and Ryan, Lauren's part of Team CDH, were all sitting at the table waiting for Nick. Nick was waiting for things to calm down before he came over. There Ryan was very adamant of wanting a draw, and I was like, I would like to have this conversation when Nick gets here because I want everyone to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, okay. So we wait, and then Nick gets here, and I was like, Ryan was discussing a draw, and Nick was like, I'm okay with the draw. It guarantees me an in. I'll be second seed no matter what happens, just about, or like top 4. And he was like, but if I win, I get to go first in my semifinals and then first in the finals. So he's thinking about it, and then I'm like, Lauren, what points are you at right now? And Lauren was like, I'm at 6 points. And I was like, oh, so you just don't make it if you draw. And he was like, there's a chance, but I don't think so. And me and Nick look at each other, we look at him, and I was like, oh, so we're playing. Okay, we're playing. And Ryan was like, oh, okay, I guess we're playing. And we're like, hey, we get to play Magic. That's what we want to do.
True.
And so I'm going second. Lauren has a pretty fast start of like a turn 2 Kenrith. Nick kept a hand on the sole fact that he knows that he can beat a Kenrith player because he kept a Gilded Drake, so he stole the Kenrith. Lauren fights for like 2 turns, building up resources to then try getting his Kenrith back, which he ends up doing. Nick steals it again. Lauren's clearly getting upset. Nick's like, hey, it was a Gilded Drake. What's a better target than a Kenrith? And
True.
Lauren was like, yeah, but I can't have my fucking commander. He swore. There was a little bit of tension you could tell at the table, and Nick was like, hey, I'm not trying to be hard. I'm just trying to win the game, and I think that was my best opportunity. Just like when you do anything that affects me, it'll hurt, but I know you're not doing it intentionally to target me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they find a little bit of an agreement there. I play a rule law, and I become the threat at the table. They all just start hitting me, and I was like, guys, calm down. They're like, well, we're trying to win, and I was like, okay. But Kenrith is doing their thing now. You're doing your thing. I don't know why my mono blue deck that has passed for the last 3 turns is the threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I communicated that with the table, so they kind of backed off a little bit. I ended up getting a Bowmaster off of my imposter mech to not kill the original Bowmaster, but mainly to get a blocker. Because Lauren was very intent on killing me as quickly as possible. Which is okay. People are allowed to hate me. But we keep on going. Nick was like, I go to my turn. Pass to Nick on the final turn rotations. It gets to Lauren's turn, or right before Lauren's turn. Lauren tries reanimating things. We fight a little bit on the stack. And then I cast my 1 spell. Ryan cast his 1 spell. And then Lauren was like, oh, it's a draw. I can't win here. It's the end of turns. And then Nick was like, let me think for a second. He had like 9 mana open. He was seeing if there was a way he could get to Born Upon the Wind, cast it, remove my rule law, and win on the stack. And I told him, I don't think you're able to do that.
This is the minute he unlocks the rule of law. He unlocks all your interaction.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm just thinking. And then he's like, no, there's no way I can get to my Born Upon the Wind because of the rule law. And I'm like, okay, so it's a draw. And so that's how my Pod 5 went. It was pretty concise. We all played smart, no real mistakes. How did your Pod 5 go? It looks like it was a draw.
Yeah, Pod 5 sat down me on Seaedh, Josh on Seaedh, Atlas on Kenrith, and we called him, he just went by Yev. He was on the Manual Storm Zada, which
Yep.
sick deck. Really happy to play against it. Like, he's also was a really good player.
Yeah.
I was going first seat. I think I land. My hand was like 3 lands. I don't really remember my opening hand. Um, it was I know it was like 3 lands, other significant pieces, but nothing like too dangerous. I think I like land dork. I think I made the comment that I finally got to see my birds of paradise in an opening
Yeah.
hand, and I was like, land birds pass. Uh, Josh goes land rock draineth, and I'm like, okay, this is the game we're sitting in. And
Yeah.
then Atlas goes land pass. uh Zada goes land gamble, gambles for mana crypt, pass. I'm like, okay, what do I do here now that um like there's a draineth, possible interaction over Atlas, probably no tutors available. Uh, so I go. Um, I think I land past. I had a deflecting swat in hand. Like just was holding open interaction.
Yeah.
Um, which for some reason I was doing a bit for this tournament. It felt weird.
Yeah.
Um, we go through. Josh goes Sisse. No, he goes turn 2 Savala, and I'm like, okay, we're losing this game.
Yeah.
Um, uh, oh, Atlas actually turn 1 played land Soul Ring. That's what happened. Because he goes turn 2, um, land. He had 4 mana up. He passed the turn. Um, Zada goes no land, but he plays the 3-drop red creature that every time he attacks, put a 1/1 counter and exile a top card of your library, and then you may play it for that turn.
Oh, Inti.
Is it Inti?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and plays that. So has a good just like a good creature on the board. Gonna start applying pressure. Um, and so it's like it's one of those things where it's like didn't immediately become a threat, but was getting there.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it was Lelina or Lelena, the Blade Reforge.
Oh, Lelia. Yeah.
Lelia, yeah. Um, yeah. So played that. Swung it. I think he hit like something not super important, something he couldn't cast because of the Draenith. Um, Passed over to me. I think I land passed. I wasn't doing well in this game.
Yeah.
Josh goes. Uh, he was stuck on 3 lands. Rocks. So he goes. Sisse Uemaza Jite. I was like, okay. We are losing this game soon.
Yeah.
So and Atlas goes on end step C double. We're like,
Okay.
oh, okay. He gets a Savala, which
Yeah.
is not great in Kendrith. He's playing the Solar game plan. I'm still holding open. Uh, Holding open um, uh, the deflecting swat. I didn't feel like that was the correct time to use it. He missed a land drop. It goes to his turn. He land Ewit, gets his land back, plays his land, fetches. Um, um, the Zada player goes swing, hits a land, plays Wandering Archaic. And we're like, okay, that makes this card in my hand a lot worse because I don't have my commander.
Yeah.
I find Ashiok, and I was like, okay, this deals with Josh's board a little bit because
Yeah.
he's just in a threatening position. Um, I go cast Ashiok, passes around. I mill Josh for 4, and I hit a meal Joda and 2 other cards that were not as important, but it
Yeah.
set him back so far. We at some point we found out Atlas had a known Oppo in hand, or known Quarter Calling in hand that could go grab Oppo.
Yep.
Um, so Josh didn't go for it. Atlas was just he wasn't able to go Kenrith because there was a Draenith, so Josh and Atlas were trying to make a deal where like he could swing Draenith in and Atlas could kill it and then reanimate it, but Atlas couldn't guarantee do that in one turn.
Yeah.
He was a short 1 mana. So it's just like cycling through. I think eventually I get a Esper Sentinel and a Ragavan, like slightly building up my board. I draw 1 or 2 cards off Esper Sentinel.
Yeah.
Zada isn't doing much either. He's just sandbagging. And then Draenith gets removed, and Zada had an emergent zone.
Oh, okay.
And so we're like, okay. And we're just like, okay, we're chilling. Draenith gets removed. Everyone looked past it. Like I think he played on emergent zone like 3 turns earlier. Didn't even realize.
Yeah. And you're not expecting the mono red player to flash.
Yeah. So Draenith gets killed. Atlas is like, yeah, Atlas just isn't able to do anything on his turn. So he was able because of the Wandering Archaic, and the GTA had gotten a couple swings in, so I had 4 counters on it. And because it would have had more, but Josh was slowly just picking off my board. Eventually, I let the Ashiok go down because I just had to. I was getting pressured too much. Josh wasn't able to tutor at that point. So Atlas showed Josh. He was like, "I have this Quarter Calling in hand. I'm gonna cast it no matter what. I want you to mine it, and if you don't want him to copy it, to put any to get like his game winning creature into play, then you have to kill that Wandering Archaic. I'm casting it no matter what." And I was like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. So Josh kills the Wandering Archaic, and in response to the last trigger, Zada goes crack emergence zone, and we're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
He casts like 1 spell, gets stopped, and then Atlas cast a counter spell, paid for the Wandering Archaic. He was like, okay, cast Zada, and then let the Wandering Archaic die. Atlas no longer had the mana to be able to go for the Displacer. Yeah, because he said it was gonna be for 4 for Displacer Kitten, because he had already had Ewit on the board.
Oh, yeah.
And with Ashiok gone, it's just a free, like, nothing's getting exiled. So we get to a point where we're all discussing, like, Atlas is with known Quarter Calling, he's a immediate threat. So we all basically turned to playing hands revealed. We've had, I think, a total of a deflecting swat, endurance, my mental misstep, and it was a red instant that dealt 4 damage to across a couple of creatures.
Pyrokinesis.
Pyrokinesis, yeah. Atlas had quarter calling, neoform, delay, with dockside, and the one drop counterspell offer you can't refuse. So he starts out his turn, plays the dockside, counts I think 7. And so I think I had 3 at that point. Josh had 4, and or like I think it was. Oh no, we each had 2. So it was 6. Um, so plays dockside and plays neoform, sacking the Savala, and we're like, okay, this is Displacer Kitten. And I was telling the table, I was like, if this resolves, we lose the game. We have to respond here. And Josh was saying, no, we don't respond here. And I was like, yes, we do, because once he gets the ability to flicker things, we just start losing.
Yeah.
And he's like, so I was like, I think we pyrokinesis now, and then we get the we pyrokinesis now to where you can target Ewit, dockside, force out the delay or offer. I am able to, if it's the offer, then we mental misstep it. If it's the delay, we deflecting swat it. And so we're discussing this, and then Joss was like, no, I think there's a different point we interact. And just something, I don't think so. Zada player decided to side with him, and so we had to let Neoform resolve. There was no convincing them. And so Neoform resolved, Displacer Kitten, and exactly what I said happened. He was able to flicker dockside Ebit, put 2 triggers on the stack while we were trying to counter everything, and it's just like it wasn't working out the way we needed it to. And so we ended up Atlas was kind enough to, for Josh and Yev's sake, to ID at the end before winning the game to get their standings better, which makes sense, but could have possibly lost other people out of standings, and so where they could have still possibly made it, but who knows. And so it's one of those things where it was like he did a nice thing, but that it was a really, really weird game. So and then we made top 16.
We did.
There was 4 from the Bellingham side that made top 16.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great showing for us. Me, you, Jack, and Nathaniel. Nathaniel came down. I heard Nathaniel wanted to go, so I messaged him on Discord, and I was like, hey, me and Parker are going. I checked with Parker to make sure it's okay if he comes, and Parker was like, yeah, absolutely. And he came in, jammed, was playing Jensen Luris. Wasn't super confident in himself, and I'm like, you got this. You know what you're doing. Just jam. You know how to play. We talked to him the night before because we were playing some games at Zulus, and he's like, I think I might be attempting wins too fast. And I was like, well, slow it down a little. Wait 1 or 2 turns. Wait until you see that window open up. And that's what he did today, and he executed. He got the win and then 3 draws, which is outstanding, honestly, for your second tournament with the deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you fine if I talk about my top 16 before we talk about yours?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yours took 3.5 hours.
Yes.
Mine took probably like an hour. It flew by. It was a really, really good game. Going second, we had Rocco in seat 1. Me in seat 2. Jarrett on Malcolm Tavesh in seat 3, and Alexander on Derevi seat 4. Really really good game. I had kept second 7. It was like 3 lands, vamp tutor, mind break trap. Jeez, my dogs. uh Vampiric tutor. I Rocco goes turn 1, land crypt, um uh the dork that taps for 3 um uh for 3 mana to only cast creatures. And so we're like, oh, we're on a clock instantly.
Yep. Yep.
So then we're like, okay, we're on a ticking time clock real quick.
Yeah.
I go my turn, I go uh I go land pass. Um uh Jarrett goes land. I think he went mana vault, an arcane signet. I think he built up artifacts. Was building up his board well. Drevi had mulled to 5, so he had land pass for 2 turns.
Yeah.
Rocco goes land Wirewood symbiote. Rocco and then passed, and we're like, okay, so we're on even more of a clock because he doesn't
Yep.
have to go Wirewood symbiote turn around on the first one. So we're like, okay, we're on a clock. I go end step Vampiric Tutor. I had Ancient Tomb in hand, so I Vampiric Tutor for Cauldron for the possible Academy Rector line, plus
Yeah.
being able to just like hold up good to say activations with my colorless mana.
Yep.
My last card in hand was Lauren. That's what it was. I drew the Cauldron for a turn, played the played the played the Ancient Tomb, played Lauren, blew up the Rocco player's Mana Crypt. So we're not on as much of a clock, but we're on a clock still.
Yeah.
He passed to Jared. Jared goes land 1 more rock Tevish, plus Tevish, get 2 thralls, pass. Drevi goes land Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And so we're like, okay, he has the Agathas. We're good on that part. Forces Rocco to pivot. I still have Mindbreak Trap for if he tries to go for it. He goes land, counts out his mana. He's like, I just don't have enough to go for it. And I'm like, if you try to go for it, I have you countered. And he's like, okay. Because he would have had to go Rocco and then recast Rocco, and it's just like, I have you
Yeah.
covered. I think he went Rocco on 1 to get a dork. And so we're
Okay.
like, okay. So then he passed. I played a land and passed. I wanted to hold up Hardcast Mindbreak Trap. I had Lauren activations to be able to draw a card. And so Jared goes land plus Tavesh. He had less mana because he had to use like a Grim Monolith for Tavesh, so he was a little less mana. Or no, he had to use a mana vault for Tavesh, so he went land Grim, had piece of interaction in hand. and then which later to be revealed was a Chain of Vapor.
Yep.
Derevi goes untap, hardcast Derevi. I say hardcast Derevi. Cast Derevi for 3, untap a land. Oh no, Jared board wipes. That's what happens. No, that was in the next turn. Yeah, so Derevi landed, and the Derevi player was trying to convince me to let him draw a card, so he drew a land so he could force tap down the dork that tapped for 3 mana.
Yeah.
Rocco, I think I had drawn a Swan Song on turn. I drew a Swan Song off the Lauren. After the Rocco did nothing significant, he got scared, so he was just like, I think he Roccoed on 2, and I was like, if this is this grabbing a Grand Abolisher? He's like, no. I was like, what is it grabbing? He's like, I won't reveal, but it won't be a Grand Abolisher.
Okay.
He ends up grabbing a Dockside, counts like I think 8 for him or something.
Yeah.
It's a good amount. He bounces Rocco to his hand. I was like, don't go for it. He's like, okay, I won't go for it. Yeah, it just has Rocco in hand. He didn't bounce Rocco to hand. He just had it on the board.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't go for it because we're shutting off a line there. You're gonna get eaten. Your thing's gonna get eaten.
Yeah.
I have a way of countering your Rocco if you go for it. Like, just don't go for it. Go to my turn, or on end step, I tap Lauren, draw a card, let me and Derevi draw a card. I drew a Swan Song. I was like, okay, more interaction, that's good. Go to my turn, draw, play a land, and let me and Jared draw a card because I want the Dimir player to have some counter magic.
Yeah.
I drew Smothering Tithe, and I was like, this is just gas right now.
Yeah.
Played Smothering Tithe, and I was like, okay, we're sitting pretty. Played Smothering Tithe, and Jared was on the fence of letting it resolve. I was like, here, look, I have a Mind Break Trap. I have and 2 other pieces of interaction. If you leave this around by his turn, I will have it activated where I can hardcast this to deal with this. And he let it resolve. Went to his turn, made a treasure. He activated Tavesh. Drew 2 more cards, made 2 more treasures. He played, and then he board wiped, and I was like, this is perfect. Gets rid of the Rocco player's board. Rocco, in response, used Wirewood to untap his dork and bounce Rocco to his hand. And we're like, okay, we're sitting good. Like, he still has Rocco in hand, but we're sitting good. I think he had a Felidar. The Rocco player was able to put a Felidar on the board. I don't remember exactly how. He had a Felidar. So getting rid of the board with a Cauldron in play. If he tries to go for his Kiki lines, we can eat it. So we go Derevi player's turn. He doesn't have anything. He just has Derevi. He passes the turn. The Rocco player goes cast Rocco for X equals 5, grab Kiki, and so I let that resolve. Didn't think it was that big of a deal. Kiki then hardcast Karmic Guide. I was like, okay. I'm thinking I have like touched the Spirit Realm in hand. I can touch the Kiki, but I think we lose. So I just hardcast Mind Break Trap, exiled it. He passed to me, and so I was like, okay. I drew a card for turn, and it was Eldamri's Call, and I was like, okay, I think I can win here. Played Eldamri's Call, tutored Dockside, played the played Cutsil, or played Seaedh, tutored Cutsil, um, was able to then, with the mana from the Smothering Tithe and everything, tutor Aminachi to flicker, get 7 more treasures, and just storm off, or
Yeah.
to chain tutor and win the game. It was a really close game. We were on edge from Rocco the entire game, and everyone put up a great fight.
Yeah.
How did your 3.5 hour top 16 go?
It was fantastic. It was me, Atlas, Maxwell, and Nathaniel. So me and Nathaniel unfortunately had to play semifinals against each other. So it was friendly fire. I guess it was all really friendly fire. We're all great friends. We have great rapport.
Mm-hmm.
This was my first time actually getting to play with Max. Great guy. Me and him gelled really well. We were bantering basically the entire game. Before the tournament, I was joking, being like, "What if I just call Atlas a Pookie Bear?" And then we sit down, and Max is like, "Not like this, Pookie Bear," to Atlas, and I started cracking up. I was like, "Yes." But yeah, it was a really great game. The game could be summed up in one simple way: Ristic Studies.
Yeah.
Max got a turn 1 Ristic Study. I got a turn 2 or 3 Ristic Study. Nathaniel got a Esper Sentinel. Atlas had an Esper Sentinel at some point. Max got a fish out at some point. Same with Nathaniel. And we just weren't paying. We weren't being responsible gamers. Well, we were like, okay, if everyone's drawing cards off of it, we can all fight each other.
Sure.
So we were feeding everything. Max gets a Bloodchief Ascension out, and I'm like, oh shoot, if this thing goes off, my drawing cards is gonna kill me.
Mm-hmm.
It goes up to 3 counters, so it's a problem. I take, I think, 12 damage to it by just discarding cards to end step. And then I get a Steel Enchantment, and I cast Steel Enchantment, and Max is like, I need a fight over this, right? And I show him 5 counter spells in my hand, and I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You're at 51 life. You're not getting punished for this card. And he's like, okay, I'll let it result. And then those 5 counter spells, I end up discarding throughout the course of the game. We keep on going, passing, playing lands, passing, developing our boards, not really wanting to win attempt because everyone has so many cards. There becomes a moment where Alice's board is really big. He has a ton of untapped mana. He has like a Ranger Captain lock on us, just about. So for 2 life and me gaining 2 life, he can pay 5 mana and silence the table. And I'm like, okay, this is a problem. And then Max was like, I agree. He casts a Toxic Deluge, and we're discussing how much life he wants to pay. And he was like, I did the math, and he can get his Kenrith up to an 11/11, so I'm going to pay 10 life. He lets me draw a card. Nathaniel's Bowmaster triggers, and I'm like, deal 1 to Kenrith, just in case Atlas wants to tap out and protect Kenrith. I don't know why you would do that, but it's just a precaution.
Mm-hmm.
And Alice is like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, it's just a precaution, right? Because you could possibly save your Kenrith. He's like, yes, but I'm not going to. And I'm like, well, we're just making sure, right? This
Yeah.
1 damage to someone's life isn't going to affect the game. We're all going to win with some kind of infinite combo or a 2-card combo.
Yeah.
So this
Fastest
doesn't
concept.
matter. Yeah. And he was like, I mean, I guess, but you're targeting me. And I'm like, no. And then, so that happens. We pass. Atlas plays Kenrith, plays another spell. Max goes. He's thinking about casting Gyruda, and I was like, please don't cast Gyruda. And he was like, why not? And I was like, Atlas doesn't seem concerned about this, which means that he has a stun dog. And he was like, maybe you're right. And Atlas was like, well, no, because you have interaction for this. And I was like, but that's not how you operate. You would be freaking out if you'd be like, oh shoot, there's a Gyruda coming down. We don't have an answer to this. Bailey, do you have an answer? But you weren't like that. So I did a soul read. I never even confirmed it with Atlas if there was a stunt double. But I was like, if there's a stunt double, we will just lose to Atlas. Because he had enough for a stunt double plus a reanimation. And so he was like, I think you're right. So he passes. He plays an emergent zone, passes. My next turn, I have 1.5 million cards. I think I had 25 cards in hand. So I play a land, play a few things, draw people cards, and then I discard a bunch of cards, a lot of them being counter spells. Atlas was short on mana. I figured he was going to try reanimating his death right because he's done it 3 times this game. And then he'll only have 3 mana. So I thought that would be a prime time for me to have an opportune chance to win with a Born Upon the Wind temporal manipulation to take an extra turn, like a Final Fortune. We go to Nathaniel's turn, and he activates the Fiend Artisan on 2. And we're like, oh, this is Grand Abolisher. So we fight. Well, Alice is like, what do we have? I have this Oppo, but I'm going to pass priority on it because I want to use your guys' interaction. And I was like, okay. And then, so, no, Alice cracks Ranger Captain. Reanimates Ranger Captain, cracks it. To be like, okay, I'll cast this after I have the protection so no one can counter it. Our friend Max was like, you only have 3 mana to Atlas. And I was like, yeah. So he cracks his emergent zone and tries winning. He
Doesn't he Born Upon the Wind?
Is it Born Upon the Wind?
I think he put a Necromancy on the stack.
Oh, Necromancy, and then there's responses from Nathaniel and from Atlas. The stack gets pretty large. And then there's a Born Upon the Wind to try attempting a win, which he would have had an attempt if he realized that he had an extra treasure. So he goes for his combo. I'm like, hey, I might have an answer. I have this Whirl of Invention. I can go get Trinisphere, which I probably shouldn't have said. I think that's the one misplay I made that game, was promising I would get a Trinisphere. But that's okay. So I get the Trinisphere. Makes everyone else's spells cost 3 more. Well, cost 3. Atlas is able to basically control the game just enough in order to get us to not lose. The Gyruda player, if he did go for it unprotected, being like, Bailey's the only one who has mana who can possibly stop me, after I told him to go for it, I would have won with a C double.
Such a sick card.
Yeah, I was hoping that it would be like, hey, I don't have any counter spells. This is your time to go for it. Which I probably should have done to see if he did just go for it. Because I wasn't lying.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something I could have done differently. But nonetheless, Atlas gets to untap with a bajillion mana, a Trinisphere protecting him. I'm the only one who could cast the spell to interact.
Yeah.
And he was able to just win. And yeah, that happens sometimes. We probably could have done a better job communicating, not promising on the War of Invention, maybe convincing Nathaniel to wait another turn or 2 more turns until there was a better opportunity.
Yeah.
But Alice got it. He maneuvered the hellscape and got there.
Yeah. With just spectating around and spectating the pod, I noticed it was after the end where they were like, okay, we need to pick this up a little bit. It's been a bit like that you guys started picking it up, and it was a calm, cool, collected game until then, and I think that's probably what flustered Nathaniel the most.
Yeah, I think so. Well, because Alice was like, you need to make a game action.
Yeah.
But the entire rest of the game, he was like, take your time. We have all the time in the world.
Yeah. And then just standing around for 3 hours. Let me recoup for top 4.
Yeah. And then top four, you're in it.
Yeah. Top four. Um, by the end of your guys' game, Atlas was out of it. He was seat one. Nick was seat two. I was seat three. Jack was seat four. Um, Atlas right out the gate goes like land. It builds up this board. I don't know if it was a turn two one ring. Nick goes builds up his board. Also, I think he played a turn one Timna. I go with the saddest Esper Sentinel ever, going third.
Yeah.
Um, go Esper pass. Um, this is just Jack goes land diamond. Um, something I missed the Esper trigger. Then it goes back to Atlas. He plays a one ring. Like we're all moving fast. We're all tired.
Yeah.
Plays one ring, draws a card. Um, Nick tanks for 5 minutes. I want to say about like what he can do. Um, Swings, draws a card, plays a Drana and Lunvala, I believe, and we're like, oh, sick. Activated abilities are off. Like Atlas still has his one ring. Sisei's completely locked off for me. Um, I was looking at a Fimage in hand, so I was like, okay, I can lock off activated abilities completely. So it makes it harder to win, but that just helps blue farms.
Yeah.
I go land flowering of the white tree, make Esper cost 2. And I think that's where it was the big talk about was Esper. Once Esper became 2 mana, um, it was a big deal because people just weren't paying for it.
Yeah.
Um, goes around a couple turns. There's a Draenith that lands. Um, um, uh, the Nick ends up soul partitioning Atlas's One Ring. Atlas has to remove the Draenith to get his One Ring back. Nick, I want to say turn 4, turn 5, goes for an Underworld Breach combo, or attempts an Underworld to cast an Underworld Breach. Um, uh, Jack is able to, I think, Jack was able to counterspell it. Nick was counterspell back. Um, Atlas put something down. Nick counterspelled that. Double Crom trigger. Atlas at one point C doubled the Crom. And I was drawing. I had drawn a card off each of them. Barely saw any interaction or tutors like anything that would really help me.
Yeah.
In that situation, Atlas is able to get the Mindbreak Trap on the Underworld Breach, which locks which exiles it. Goes to my turn. I'm staring at 16, 17 cards in hand, and like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
There's there there was a Ristic Study on the board from Nick, I think after turn 3. And so after just like building up the boards, everyone was building up their board state. I was the responsible one at the table apparently, and I had 4/0 drop rocks. I paid for a stick every time. I was debating on whether or not I just don't pay for a stick study, play the Cutzel in my hand, and try to assemble a win.
Yeah.
Had a good chance of possibly doing it with Force of Will backup. And that was about the only thing I had as backup. So there was it it was pretty fast. I think it only lasted like an hour and a half. Um,
Oh,
it,
if that. It
yeah,
was
like
fairly quick.
it was really quick. So I built up my board. I had a strong Esper Lauren or Esper Dronalyn Vala, uh, and everything. Like we had really good board states. We all did. Jack was drawing cards. Went to Atlas's turn, and he's just like, play a Grand Abolisher. We countered Grand Abolisher. I had the Force of Will.
Yeah,
He Force of Willed back. We countered that. Um, he countered spell. We had a counter spell war over the Grand Abolisher. Stack resolved. Um, he played a Dockside, and the major misplay of the game was uh, he was talking about casting Kenrith, and we're like, oh, okay, well, and then Nick pointed out, do you want to do that with a Adrenaline Wall in play? And he's like, true. Oh, wait, no, it's fine. I'm going to cast Kenrith. And we're like, okay. And then he's like, I'm going to Slaughter Pack targeting your Adrenaline Vala. And
yeah,
no one caught it, not even the judge. We were so exhausted.
yeah,
It was like we had been playing Magic for so long day that the slot. So sacrifice trigger went on the stack. Game actions were taken, and Adrenaline Vala went away. Um,
yeah. We noticed. I thought about it this morning, and I was like, wait.
Yeah, the that morning or the this morning we were talking about it. Um, uh, Went to Nick's turn. Ristic Study drew him a lot of cards. He ended up being able. He ended up playing a spell. I vampiric tutored for a silence, like, trying to like, hey, if you're gonna go for it, don't go for it. Like trying to scare him out. We had used a lot of interaction already, like he was able to piece together. He drew cards off Timna, which then let him, um, which just let him dig. He dug into a final for. He told me he dug into like Final Fortune. He had the imp seal. He imp sealed for a card to be able to help him progress his game plan. And so he Final Fortune took an extra turn. Meme Betrayal, while Atlas had a Tainted Pact and bin. Um, was able to just Tainted Pact Thassa's Oracle win the game by the end. Um, and yeah, it was a really good game. Went by really fast. Better than fastest finals that I've seen in a very long time. Um, and yeah, like I don't think anybody really misplayed except for that one point, and it was a really fun game.
Yeah, yeah. It was a super fun game to watch. Apparently, my facial expressions were on point that
Oh
game.
yeah,
I had everyone else
absolutely.
laughing.
Yeah,
There was like a tainted pact on like turn 2 or 3 on Alice's end step, and my facial expression was like, "What the heck is going on? My
yeah.
game is not like this."
Oh yeah, true. He tainted Pact for Forbidden Orchard or Exotic Orchard, which was super surprising. But I mean, he needed a lane to try to win the game. Um, yeah, it was a really fun game. We all had a lot of laughs. I wouldn't change anything about it. I would say the only thing that maybe I would change was push for the win while two people were basically tapped out.
Yeah,
Um,
and notice that Linval is black.
Yeah, because I think if Limfalo is black, could have opened something else up, but
Well, I
uh,
think if the John Linvala stayed on the board, Alice doesn't push as hard with
yeah,
his Grand Abolisher win attempt.
yeah, and I think then that leaves Nick to go for it, get stopped, and then
Maybe leads to you, depending on the rest of the interaction.
yeah, and so it's just one of those things where it could have just been played out that way anyways, and
Yeah,
but Um, yeah, it was a fun game no matter what. I got the Ristic study.
yep,
We ended up having a great time. I wouldn't change anything about it.
yeah. Great event.
Hmm.
It's always a great event.
Yeah,
But yeah, episode's already going long, but let's take a quick look at. This is Blind Prophets. This is Phyrexian Fangirl, or Anna. I want to just take a look at the list for myself real quick because I was like, this deck's epic.
Yeah, I wasn't able to play against her, but I heard really cool things about her deck.
Yeah, they're on Whirlpool Rider, which is so cool.
Yeah,
When it enters battlefield, shuffle the cards from your hand, then draw that many cards for only 2 mana.
and with your commander, that just
Yeah, it gives you 1,000,000 mana.
because it's not drawn that turn. Holy shit! Wait, that's sick. The new tech.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see like the payoffs. A meal, okay, I like that. Of course we have our
Thrasios, Kinnan.
Thrasios. Yeah, okay, so there's some pretty good pieces.
Oh,
Staff
staff.
Domination, that's
Staff.
infinite
Yeah, you
mana.
just win.
Yeah. Okay, this deck is sweet.
Yeah.
Finale is another way. Seagate is another big spell.
Is Derevi in the list? It is. Yeah, Derevi Emil.
Yep,
Your
with
commander.
Delny.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were talking about how insane Delny was in the deck, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Because is your commander a 2/2? Or is
Well, it
Kaidel?
doesn't work off of Kaidel.
Oh, because it's not a
Because it's only
triggered.
trigger, but
Yeah.
with Timna, and then we were talking about all the other synergies it has with like Malcolm Kinnan,
Yeah.
yeah, Derevi, and we were like,
Does Cat trigger it?
yes,
That's insane. Holy
yep,
cow. Bowmaster?
Spellseeker, Bowmasters, yes. Delny is a
Dang.
really good card.
Delny's really good in this deck.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to take a look at the list, and then my list, Fibblefip, the boy.
Fibblefib.
Yeah, this is a new version of the list
You're still on
that,
bribery?
yes,
Nice.
that I was trying out. It worked. I think I might be changing Arcane Laboratory, taking that card out, and making a few adjustments before Punt City because I think I'm required to play this deck now.
Yes.
Um,
We have threatened
yeah,
to steal all of your collection so that you just play
true,
Fibblefip.
true. But yeah, the list is super good. I'm gonna hopefully write a primer for it soon. Maybe not before Punt City, but afterwards for sure. Especially when I win, I'm gonna have to. Um, that was a joke. I might not win, but we're
No,
gonna
no,
try.
you'll win. We
But yeah, the deck performed better than what I thought it was gonna do. Um, and yeah, I had a great time. And then of course
the Sisse.
the Sisse. Um,
I mean, it's average Sisse, good stuff.
yeah.
That's the Nico Bolas.
That's not the one you have.
This is what is this list? Yeah, no, it's
This is the list you submitted.
anyways, yeah, no, it's my list. Yeah, no,
I'm like, all these cards are in here, dude.
it's a really fun deck. It goes fast. It can go slow. It can go fast. I play it well, so I'm really excited to play into Punt City. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it should be fun. Well, that's all I had. Is there anything you wanted to add?
no, yeah, I mean, basically what we said was everything. It was a fun, really fun tournament. Everyone played well. We had a good amount from Bellingham that
Mm-hmm.
was able to top four. I think we also had 4 team members for Team Seaedh that was able to top four.
Yep. Well, not top 4, top 16.
Top 16, yeah. 2 top four for Team Seaedh. Like it was just
And 2 for Bellingham.
yep. True for
Sheesh.
Bellingham too.
Bellingham up.
Yeah, Bellingham is up. We are marking ourselves on the map. So yeah,
Yeah, we're at least trying.
yeah, true.
I don't have to carry all the weight now as a Fibblefip main.
True, but you still definitely gonna win as on Fibblefib.
Yeah, well, yeah, now I'm not the only one doing well, because now we have you, Jack, Jacob does really well.
True.
We have some studs up here in Bellingham.
True. But yeah, that was it.
I think that's the episode. Thank you for watching, guys. It's either going to be this episode next, or I might record another one tomorrow or some other time, because I don't think I'm going to have time while I'm in Punt City to record. But you never know. Thank you for watching. Peace. Oh no, I'm flustered now. I'm flustered.
Top card.